and welcome to episode 115 of JagaVision. I'm Jared Nyberg. I am your host. I also am co-owner of JagaSilk here in Victoria, BC. You can go and check out old episodes. We've got 114 of them before this one, 114 weeks of tea and good conversations and good discussions. I really encourage you to check out. Last week was particularly fun. We had Mr. Fujioka on for the first time. He's one of our oldest farmer relationships. He was joining us live from Kyoto, Japan. Had a really good session with him. We were drinking a couple of the sencha samples that he sent us for 2022, and it was just a really nice dialogue that we were able to have, and learned a lot about his Shimoyama and his Fukada senchas that he sent us. And yeah, had a good time. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about oxidation versus aging. To do that, I figured it would be interesting to drink one of this lovely tea we've also drunk on the show before. It's a Lapsang Souchong. So without further ado, that's what I'm going to do. Now, Sister Speak is likely going to join us. Sherri Anne from Sister Speak is likely going to join us. She is mid-tour as per usual. She did think that she could join us for sure, but there was some issue with flights delayed and all that fun stuff, so it might not happen. So she sent me some video of her making the tea at the airport, and hopefully we'll have her join us. So I'm gonna make some tea, and to do that, I think I will put this screen on. So I like to make my tea in this little gaiwan here. I like to make about 4 grams for 80 mils. So that's about 1 gram for every 20. It's just my preference for doing gongfu cha. Gongfu and Kung Fu are the same Chinese characters. For tea, it's often just it's pronounced, most folks pronounce it Gong Fu, so Gong Fu Cha. And it's sort of a meditative way of making tea. We do our own sort of twist on it to try and bring some kind of consistency. Funny that I say that and that the weight changes because the bowl was touching the scale and the tea stage at the same time when I weighed it out. Okay, oh, that was pretty good. Okay, so we were off by 0.1 of a gram. I think that's okay. I think that's okay. So we're going to do some boiling of some water. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the tea that I'm going to be working with. So this tea is a Lapsang Souchong. I don't know if you can see that okay. Normally when you think Lapsang Souchong, you think smoky. I actually am the first person to ask tea farmers to not, that are from this region that's famous for the Lapsang Souchongs, from anybody sort of getting tea from Wuyi Mountain, I asked them not to include samples of this tea. I really don't like smoky, like really overly smoky teas. That being said, I also used to feel that way about selections coming to me from from Keeman, and Keeman shouldn't be thought of that way, like just getting a Keeman. Keeman is a region, but when a lot of us folks are drinking tea from Keeman, we're going to assume that it's going to be smoky. But I have found so many beautiful Maofangs from the region that for me now, I don't even really have that association anymore. And I think that's going to happen to me with Lapsang Souchong. When I think Lapsang Souchong, so overly smoky, so little tea flavor that I'm not interested. This tea is gorgeous. It is not overly smoky. It is this nice big leaf done in a way where it's extremely floral. Very interesting. It was harvested in 2021. So this brings us to our question about aging versus oxidation. So normally speaking, if I wanted to get a, can you see that? It's kind of, if I wanted to get myself a nice tea, I'd make sure that it's in the current harvest year. I would not want to get a tea that is as old as this tea is, where harvested in spring of 2021. But when I'm dealing with tea from, you know what, that should be a rinse, so I'm going to quickly rinse that off. Kind of overfilled it. So I would normally want to make sure that it was harvested fairly recently. This tea being a little bit far gone, I would go, okay, this isn't going to be an enjoyable tea. Now, that's not necessarily true, especially with teas from this region. Your Rogle, your rock oolongs are going, like Da Hong Pao would be a really famous rock oolong. You would want to drink it actually year after harvest, not as a fresh tea, and then it's just going to improve for that year. If you get into your teas from Yunnan, Pu'ers, your true black teas, you're going to find that those teas are going to taste better aged. Just yesterday, I had the owner of Cloudwalker Tea in here, and he was making me a beautiful selection from Yunnan that had been aged in both Hong Kong and in Taiwan, and it was from 1982, and it was amazing, really really good tea. Um, Now I specialize, or my company, or my wife and my company specializes in matcha, and matcha is sort of the opposite of this equation. It oxidizes really, really fast. So what's going on there, right? There's an idea that when we're drinking tea, especially when we're drinking fresh teas like matchas, that it needs to be as fresh as possible. And I find that process a lot easier to understand, right? Because it's kind of like milk that way, right? We don't really drink milk, at least unfermented milk, that is gone sour, because it can be a very painful experience. See, that's so good, like really good. Um, and one of the reasons for that is oxidation. That's actually the major reason, and it's just basically we find that after 3 months from the mill date, our matchas, the umami starts to disintegrate. You don't really get that nice brothy backbone flavor. When you get into about 6 months from the mill date, you start to see the color get a little bit more subdued, especially 9 months. Then it's really noticeable. But a lot of matcha is on the market with 2-year expiry dates, and so what is that? Well, it's again, tea isn't milk, so it's not like it's going to, you drink a 2-year-old matcha. It's not going to be pleasant, but it's not going to be like a health hazard in the same way that a milk could be. So that means that it's not quite the same thing, right? So what is happening again is you lose a lot of those antioxidants, you lose a lot of those flavor, those volatile oils that give us our really interesting flavor complexities. They start to they really get decayed, and they really disintegrate, and you don't have that interesting flavor dynamic anymore. At least the kinds of flavor dynamics that you are looking for in a quality matcha. So there's a decay, or you could say a transition to something very different. So we can actually harness the power of that transition when we're working with teas that have been processed in a different way. So our true black teas, or some of these more darker oolongs where they've been oxidized a little bit more heavy on purpose during processing. And it might be useful right now to talk a little bit about production oxidation versus storage oxidation. So production oxidation is on purpose. It's this idea of agitating leaves and making them more sort of active during the activation of an enzyme called polyphenol oxidase. So it's a PPO enzyme, and this enzyme gets deactivated by the farmer or the processor when they want to stop the transition of the leaf from sort of a greenish color to more of a rusty brown color, or even a dark brown color. So they want to make it into a green tea. They're going to hit the leaves with heat and destroy this enzyme or deactivate this enzyme pretty early on in the process. Whereas if they want to make a crimson tea like I'm drinking now, they're going to deactivate the enzyme a lot later in the process. So then you get into questions about things like, say, Darjeeling teas from Darjeeling that are processed into crimson teas yet don't have much of a shelf life. So why is that? And a big reason is going to be due to the fragility of the leaves. They're more they're like a thinner leaf. They're less dense. They're also processed in a way where they're less packed in. When you get into your true black teas, like your pu'ers, there's the added benefit of a fermentation. So you're adding a culture to this whole mix, and that's going to develop and change and interact with this oxidizing leaf over time to create really interesting flavors. And it's going to harness that decay and turn it into something really, really profound. What I'm drinking right now, again, I would normally say, okay, it's a 2021 harvest crimson tea. That would mean that this is no longer suitable for JagaSilk, because I really want to talk about teas that are current year, that are still quote unquote good. I sometimes need to arrest that conviction and say, hey, I'm good with this. And this is a great example of a tea where I need to make that decision. So again, looking at it, knowing that it's from Wuyi Mountain, knowing that the history of rock oolongs, or these dahong paos, these shuishans, these rogues, these famous teas from Wuyi Mountain, are a sort of a denser, bigger leaf. They're processed very dark in terms of that oxidation process. So there's a little bit more room for them to spend some time developing flavor. There's a little bit of this with green teas. You actually, in the past, would find Japanese farmers very hesitant to release their teas before October, because those teas would need to rest that were harvested in June. And you would only be able to find really interesting flavors when they'd had that chance to really find themselves. You'd get this very thin, very floral flavor without much umami built up, because they hadn't had that chance to rest. So resting does make a lot of sense. They do this in chocolate with cocoa beans. They do this in coffee with coffee green beans. There's right after harvest is not as ideal as letting them. You see this actually in hunting too, when people have game and they're I mean, there's lots involved in this process, but letting it rest before you eat it is going to make it less gamey. There's a whole process to make this successful, but there are a lot of parallels in terms of not consuming right away after you've caught or harvested what you're working with. So I find, again, when I first had this tea in 2021, it was impressive. It was very impressive. It was a very good tea. But it wasn't as amazing as it is now. So not only is there a rationale for, saying it's still good, but in some cases, like this, the tea is better 2 years on. So it's worthwhile to taste your tea. So I've always been the proponent of composting old tea. I think it's really easy for tea to build up. And we open up tea after tea after tea. And as a tea community, we don't necessarily go through it. And I think that that's really sad, because it's like opening up all your bottles of wine in your cupboard and not going through them. Like, what are you doing, right? Like, you really need to understand that each of those teas is like a bottle of wine. And you need to open it up, and you need to go through it and focus on it, and not necessarily just, yeah. But what I like doing is grabbing, I get to do this because I'm a tea purveyor, but I like the idea that I get a bunch of, like, I'll get like a kilo of a really good tea, and I'll pack it down into 25, 40 gram pouches, or my team will. And then that means that I do have one that's open that is exposed to oxygen, and therefore that process of oxidation speeds up, and I probably want to drink it within 3 to 4 weeks, if not, a month and a half. But the ones that are sealed in pouches, I get to sort of test them out in 3 months, 6 months, if I don't sell out of them. And this particular tea, again, where is that timer? There's a timer going on. Give me one sec. Oh, thank you. There it is. So where was I? I should probably finish that steep. Lots going on. Okay. Thank you. So we have collecting brain. An interesting thing that I found is that there's so many rules out there for having fresh tea, but there's also moments that they can be broken. I was going to talk about, also, this same tea, if I just left it in this tin, even though it has this nice inner lid, it's not the same as it being heat sealed with less oxygen in there with it. Reducing its opportunity to oxidize by keeping it heat sealed and then drinking it later is great. And if I didn't have a tea company, probably one of the things I would do is, if I wanted to go through this tea and I'm like ready to move on, even though it's still an interesting tea, I want to see how it ages, I'd probably squish out all the air out of the package, and I'd invest in a heat sealer, and I would heat seal it closed, and then I would write on it the date, that it came in, so I don't lose track of the year, because oftentimes you just have expiry dates on a lot of teas. You don't really know when they were harvested. So I would just go, okay, this is the date roughly that I think it's from, and then I would go back to it in 6 months, and I'd clip it open, and I would drink it again if I wanted to see, if I had a really good reason to believe that it might be even better later. A tea that was really surprising for me was, again, senchas, matchas, Japanese teas. They decay so quickly. You really need to, they're brilliant when they're fresh. They're not so brilliant when they're old. So what does that mean? It means that it's a good idea to just go through them especially quickly. We got a tea from a farm in Mandokoro. It comes up quite a bit on the show because it's such a special place, but it's the Kawakami family in Mandokoro in Shiga, Japan. They grow zairaishu, or heirloom tea. So they're not using a cutting or a cultivar and growing a nursery produced or a very dependable variety of the tea plant. They're growing what is naturally sort of created itself from seed in that region, and 100-year-old plus plants with really deep roots. And that kind of tree is a lot more similar to the kinds of trees you see in Wuyi Mountain or in these more traditional tea growing regions. Okay? So if you can get a dense leaf, deeply oxidized, okay, really well crafted, deep rootstock tree producing your tea, then you have a very good chance that it's going to age well. And that's exactly what proved true for this tea, the sencha that we had produced in Mandokoro. I'll be honest, the first time I had it, I wasn't super enthusiastic about it. I was, but I wasn't. It was interesting to me because it went sweet, bitter, kind of grassy, a little bit of umami. It was like a very complex flavor. And that was interesting to me because it was so different. But it was even better when that tea had a chance to rest. And I mean like 2 years and then 3 years. And I wouldn't have even thought to have had this, but again, we had a chance to drink a 1980s Japanese green tea that had been purposefully aged, and it was fantastic. So in the right conditions, where you're not just aggressively aging the tea, you're not aggressively oxidizing it, you're going to find that many of these teas can taste really good even a little bit later on. Oh, it looks like we have our guest joining us. Okay. So, oh, hello, hello. Hello? Oh, I can hear you. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very good. Are you in the airport?
I'm on the plane again.
Oh wow. Okay. So that's awesome. Okay. You look
I've
like
got
a
my tea right here. I
yeah.
made it in Seattle.
You sent me video, so you were able to make it before you got on the plane.
Yeah, and I
That
put it in here.
mm, amazing. I was just talking to everybody about aged teas versus old teas, or when is it that you're aging a tea and when is it when you're ruining a tea? Um, when is it like a vintage and when is it just old? And that
Ah,
right? And this particular tea is definitely an example of a tea that's aging really well because of a particular set of conditions that I was going over during the show today. And that generally it's a deep root stock, old tree from a region that's oxidizing their tea leaves pretty heavily during production. And how awesome is this
so
tea?
good.
Isn't it amazing?
Unbelievable. Oh my gosh, it's like unbelievable.
Like,
It was unbelievable.
oh, it's gone
It
now.
is.
It is
No,
okay.
it is. I drank it in the airport and then I put the rest in here. I just didn't want to drink it on the plane. I haven't.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's still
I
an
didn't drink
odd
it as soon
time.
as I.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Cool. So you're mid tour. Where are we going now?
Oh gosh, well, just played a festival in Massachusetts. It was so amazing with Mary Lambert. Have you ever
Okay.
heard her?
No, I
Oh
haven't.
my gosh.
Okay, we'll
Oh my
look. We'll have
gosh.
to look
I
her up.
sent you a clip.
Okay.
Unbelievable. And Melissa Ferrick and Sister Funk,
Sister Funk and Sister
another,
Speak
yeah,
sharing the stage.
Adrian Mac Davis.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, and then this weekend is in Paris, a Tiny House Festival and another event at
Okay.
Sherwood Brewery. I'm super excited for Martin this weekend.
Yeah, Martin Bonham. Yeah, that's gonna be super exciting. We've sold so many tickets. I'm
Yeah.
We're sold out of four seaters. I think we're almost sold out of three seaters. We're like
Woo.
very close to being sold out of two seaters. Very soon we're going to get to a similar place as when you were playing here, where we only had those single seats, no tables, tickets
Yeah.
left. It's looking pretty mighty. Yeah. Very excited.
Wow.
Viola da Gamba. For those watching, that's going to be this Saturday. It's session 5 of 6 of the musical T series, and this series just seems to keep doing better and better. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have the
So
tables
cool.
full up at the top. Yeah, I think we crossed the 30 tickets sold threshold today. So
Woohoo.
yeah, so we'll see what happens. We still have a couple days left for sales, and then
Wow.
that just leaves us with session 6 of 6, which will be on, was it the 8th or the 10th of October? I can't remember. It's that second Saturday um,
Yeah.
in
Did you,
October.
I can make it if you want me there.
Amazing. All right, come on over. That would be amazing. Very,
I get
very
back
cool.
from California a few days before that, so I can pop over.
Nice. Always welcome. Yeah, no, it would be lovely to have you over. But
Let it roll.
yeah, but yeah, I was really stoked about this tea. I was just talking a little bit about how sencha and matcha are teas that were more prone to be really unhappy with them as they get older, whereas your true black teas and some of your more darkly withered oolongs, your darkly withered crimsons are going to be a little bit more, I guess, able to age. But aging is a process. I was just actually drinking a 1982 kind of a mix between a Sheng and a Show Pu'er yesterday. It was like
I, I
syrup.
gotta warn you.
What's up?
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we're about to get off the plane.
Okay,
I gotta.
sure. Yeah, you
I
should
gotta go.
probably go. Okay. Well, thank
Ah,
you. You have any words you want to say about? So you made the tea. Do you want to quickly tell everybody watching how you made it, what you think of it, and if you have to go, just go.
absolutely delicious, a beautiful mix of like full and sweet at the same time. I'm in love.
Sweet. Okay, cool. All right. Well, power to you, and we'll see you again. I'm sure, hopefully next Thursday on the show.
Yes, thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right. Take care.
All right, peace
Bye.
and love.
Peace
Bye.
and love.
Hello from Vancouver.
Yeah. Amazing.
Home, sweet home.
You're in Vancouver.
BC. I'm in Vancouver. BC. I just saw all the mountains and oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be home. All right.
Okay.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that was Sherri Anne with the Sister Speak. She was just joining us from the airplane, so that was pretty awesome. Landing in Vancouver in her tour as she's coming from California. She's just across the water. JagaSilk's over here in Victoria, so that's pretty cool. Again, Lapsang Souchong. This should make it onto the webpage pretty soon. I've been meaning to put it up since we got it in mid 2021. There's just been a cascading number of factors that have made it so that's been very difficult. If we do get it up there, try to get your hands on this tea. It's rested, it's tasting fantastic, and it's one of those teas where it's I think better now than when I got it at first. So cheers to aged tea. Be careful to not mistakenly oxidize your teas to the point where they don't taste good. Now, before we go, oxidized teas, what they taste like, old hay. Crimson teas taste very muted and very woody. You just get a blandness to them. They're a lot less exciting. They lose their vibrancy. If you're noticing that happening with your tea, it may be storage conditions, or you've just had it open for too long. So be careful with your storage. Cool, dark, dry place. Never put it in the fridge after you've opened it, but you don't want to leave it out on a hot counter or anything like that either. So be careful, but know that there can be some forgiveness. It's rare, but it can happen where your tea tastes better later than it did when you first got it. So have a good one. I'm Jared Nyberg, JagaSilk. You want to watch more of these videos, just go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/JagaSilk. You can click on subscribe. You'll know when we go live, which is every Thursday at 2 o'clock. You can also click the bell button, and then it will actually notify you. You can also check out archived episodes by going on the channel and kind of scrolling through. There's also some how-to videos on how we make different teas, etc. And you can ask questions in the comment section. We'll do our best to respond. And I hope you have a great day. See you if you're in Victoria, perhaps on Saturday at the show. There will be a flight of cold brew teas that are served in champagne flutes from a champagne bottle, a new cold brew tea project that we're working on. And looking forward to having you down. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.